with steadfast love and mercy. You may be seated.
If you would this morning, let me ask you to be turning to Psalm 100. That will be part of the text that I want to use this morning as we talk about the subject this morning of a thankful heart. As you probably can tell, my voice is not 100%. I don't know that my voice is ever 100% anymore, but I hope that if you can survive it, I can survive it. So I appreciate that. I have been having a little issue over the past several days, but I believe I'm well past the problematic part, and glad that I'm able to be with you this morning. Hope that you've had a very, very good Thanksgiving weekend, a national holiday in which the government has kind of asked us to be thankful. Of course, as Christians, we're always thankful. There's so many things to be thankful for. And so I appreciate the fact that our government can still offer an opportunity for us to be grateful and for us to be thankful. And I hope that all of us have had a good time. I'll leave this afternoon to go spend a few days with my parents. As I have said in the family report, I'm going primarily to help my sisters to evaluate, and my mother to evaluate what needs to be done in the future care for my dad. And I would solicit your prayers as we think about that and kind of help my mother figure out what to do moving forward. So that's the purpose of my going, and I would appreciate your prayers as well as we consider all those kinds of things. We do have guests this morning. Thank you for being here. I know we have some who are watching our live stream broadcast, and we have a lot of folks among us who are part of our church family who aren't here. They're away. And so we certainly wish them that they will have a safe trip back home. Several of you have sent texts to Kenneth and Trent and me in reference to the podcast title that will begin over the course of the first of the year. And so I appreciate that. Several of them are really good. Some of them are very good. And some of them, what were you thinking? But I liked it. I mean, I liked giving that opportunity to folks, and it seems like it's worked pretty well. So I appreciate very, very much all of you doing that, at least the ones who did. Barry will be here tonight. Barry Britton will be here tonight. I texted with him this morning just to make sure. So he will be here in the last lesson of his 5-lesson series this year on lessons from the land. And I know you've enjoyed it. You've said such to me, and I know you've said it to him. And I appreciate that. Barry does a great job, and he'll be back with you tonight as well. I want to offer this Thanksgiving lesson a little bit later probably, but I think nonetheless just help us think about some things this morning that we have that ought to give us this thankful heart that we're thinking about. Let me initially this morning just think about a few passages, okay? First, this passage from 1 Thessalonians 5. Rejoice always. Pray without ceasing, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. This passage from Psalm 103. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless His holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all His benefits, who forgives all your iniquities, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from destruction, who crowns you with loving kindness and tender mercies, who satisfies your mouth with good things, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. This passage really tells us some things we ought to be thankful for. Not just these things, but so many things that cross our minds. Or this passage in Psalm 95, oh, come, let us sing to the Lord, let us shout joyfully to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before His presence with thanksgiving. Let us shout joyfully to Him with psalms. For the Lord is the great God and the great King above all gods. In His hand are the deep places of the earth. The heights of the hills are His also. The sea is His, for He made it. His hands formed the dry ground. Oh, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for He is our God, and we are the people of His pasture and the sheep of His hand. The whole psalm really kind of speaks to what we're trying to do this morning, doesn't it? The fact that when we do come together, we come together to honor and praise and be thankful for all the great and generous gifts that He has given to us. Or this passage in Galatians 2. As you have therefore received Christ Jesus the Lord, so walk in Him, rooted and built up in Him, and established in the faith as you have been taught. abounding in it with thanksgiving. When I hear phrases like that from the Apostle Paul, it makes me stop. When he uses words like abounding and other words that offer some superlative idea, but abounding in it with thanksgiving, I ask myself, and I'm probably sure that you do I do that? Do I abound in thanksgiving? I know I'm thankful, I know I'm grateful, but do I abound in thanksgiving? I mean, we have over the last several months and probably several years now, we have in our worship assembly, we have what we commonly identify as a Thanksgiving prayer. All of you know when it's coming. All of you know when its purpose is. But do we actually identify it each week by thinking about what has been stated, what Lee even prayed about for us this morning, thinking about all the things for which we ought to be grateful? I'm not talking this morning to an ungrateful people. I know that. I think I'm talking this morning to a very grateful people. But I think this morning's lesson maybe will help us maybe ask some other questions about whether or not we're grateful like we need to be, or to remind us of some things that we need to be grateful for. Or this passage, let me finally go, because I'm going to come back to this at the end of the lesson. Psalm 100, the passage which Josh read. Make a joyful shout to the Lord, all you lands. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before His presence with singing. Know that the Lord, He is God. It is He who has made us and not we ourselves. We are His people and the sheep of His pasture. Enter into His gates with thanksgiving and into His courts with praise. Be thankful to Him and bless His name, for the Lord is good. His mercy is everlasting and His truth endures to all generations. I realized when I said that, Josh didn't read that passage. But I thought about asking him to read that, but I thought I want to read that for myself this morning as I get into this lesson. A lot of things we could say about Psalm 100. I want to focus our attention on what is stated in verse 4. Enter His gates with thanksgiving and into His courts with praise. I like the idea of enter His gates with thanksgiving. I want to tell you something that you already know. Thanksgiving is an attitude. Thanksgiving it surrounds itself with so many things in our minds, but it is something that takes the importance off of us, which need not have it anyway, but it puts the importance on God who gives all things, and we're going to get to that at the close of our lesson. And as David said here in Psalm 100, enter His gates with thanksgiving. Are you thankful for all that God has done for you? I want to do something this morning. It's a little bit different, I think, in terms of a lesson. You are used to that with me sometime. I want to think with you for just a moment this morning about not God, but about us. I want us to think this morning about us. We all understand how important and how foundational and how first God is to all of us. We get that. And we've talked about that, and we'll mention that this morning. But I want us to talk about the thanksgiving that I think each of us should have for us. And I want to mention in a general kind of way some groups that I think are important to us. And I think it is a blessing that we all share. As you know, you and I talk among ourselves and to each other about, College View and all the things who are part of that. But I want to mention a few of our blessings here. Again, that are good to be reminded of. So if you'll give me just a moment, let me share some thoughts with you about that. I want us to be thankful, and I know we are, but I want us to remind ourselves to be thankful for the men and women of the past. When I say that, the minds of many of you who have been here for several years, the minds of you go back to men and women who are not among us anymore. Most of those men and women from our past that we think of probably have passed from this life. But for many, many years, they were part of this group. They sat in this auditorium. And for many of you, you know, you're probably thinking not only of them, but where they sat in an assembly like this morning. And while I've not been a part of this church but 10 or 11 years, a lot of you have been part of this church for much longer. And so you have myriads of people, really, multiple people who are going through your mind about that. But we draw today from their experience. We draw from what they did. We stand, if you will, on their shoulders. And so I think it's important for us who are part of this church today to remember those people. And then we have some folks among us who are older. Some are still married, some are widows, some are widowers, some are single, some struggle with their health, and they come, from my perspective, as they and when they can. Sometimes it just doesn't work. They just can't come. And we all understand that. Sometimes it's not what's best for the group, for a person to come who is not well. Case in point, me. Maybe a case in point today, but for sure case in point Wednesday night. Sometimes that's just not what is best. But those folks press on. They don't use it as an excuse. They don't use their age and their less than ideal physical condition as an excuse to say, you know what, I just can't come anymore. Now, sometimes that happens. But I appreciate the fact that there are some older folks in groups that I just mentioned who are here with us. And many of you are here right now. And I want you to know it does not go unnoticed. It does not go unnoticed. Matter of fact, when I talk to people who are younger, a lot of times names are mentioned of how encouraging you are because you are older. And you continue to come and you continue to not only come to an assembly like this, but you continue to do the will of the Father by helping in ways that you can. And again, that does not go unnoticed. And I think you need to hear that. Because my guess is sometimes you are discouraged because you can't do what you once did. Who can, right? So I think you need to be encouraged, and I think you need to hear that you're not just pushed out. You're gathered in because we appreciate that. You're such a tremendous part of who we are. You always have been and you always will be. And then I'm going to classify some folks as middle-aged. That's where I come into play. Maybe I'm older, but I kind of classify myself as middle-aged, in which there is some experience there, but there's also some level of energy that's still there. And that's not to say that older folks don't have any energy, but that's part of what wanes. Just go back and read Ecclesiastes 12. There are some things that begin to change as we change our life perspective and our life circumstances. And so to that group of people, to those of you who might classify yourself as middle-aged, understand how important you are. I don't know everything to say about this. It wouldn't be wise for me to begin to start saying everything because I'd leave more out than I was able to say. But just understand how important, how very important you are. And then we have a group groups that all of us find encouragement in. We have a lot of young adults, whatever that means. We have a lot of young singles. I value you more than you'll ever even realize. We have young adults with families. Some are younger, some are older, some are preparing to add. But all of us, don't we realize how important that is to a church, to a local church? To have that kind of encouragement and to have that kind of youth and to have that kind of future to look forward to. And so to all of you who fall into those categories, I want to say thank you. And here's what I want all of us to be reminded of. Every single one of us brings value to the group. Every single one of us brings value to the group. I want you to listen this morning to a reading that I'm going to ask Ben Little, I'm going to ask Ben Little to read. I've already asked him, so don't think I'm just putting him on the spot. To give my voice just a little break, but I want you to listen to a passage that he's going to read from 1 Corinthians 12. I want you to turn there, please. And the context is spiritual gifts. It is the fact that some had gifts that others didn't have, and there was some concern about that, as you would expect. Some people could do this, and others could do this, and some could do that. And among the group, there were people who said, well, that's more important than this is, which ultimately in their minds would make a person more important many times. But I just want you to hear from a principled perspective now. Okay, listen to it from that perspective. I want you to listen as Ben reads this. I want you to listen to how important every one of you are. How important every one of them would have been in the first century as they heard this message read. And as some of them thought, I'm not as important as somebody else. I want you to listen to what Paul says to that church in Corinth. Ben, would you come please and read that?
I'll be reading from 1 Corinthians 12, beginning at verse 12. For as the body is one and has many members, but all the members of that one body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, whether Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free, and have all been made to drink into one Spirit. For in fact, the body is not one member, but many. If the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? And if the ear should say, because I am not an eye, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? If the whole body were an eye, where would be the hearing? If the whole body were hearing, where would be the smelling? But now God has set the members, each one of them, in the body just as he pleased. And if there were all one member, where would the body be? But now indeed there are many members and yet one body. And the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. No, much rather, those members of the body which seem to be weaker are necessary, and those members of the body which we think to be less honorable, on these we bestow greater honor, and our unpresentable parts have greater modesty. But our presentable parts have no need, but God composed the body, having given it greater honor than to that part which lacks it, that there should be no schism in the body, but that the members should have the same care for one another. And if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. And if one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. Now you are the body of Christ and members individually. And God has appointed these in the church, first apostles, second prophets, third teachers, after that miracles, then gifts of healing, helps, administration, varieties of tongues. Are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers? Are all workers of miracles? Do all have gifts of healing? Do all speak with tongues? Do all interpret? But earnestly desire the best gifts, and yet I show you a more excellent way.
I appreciate Ben reading that in our hearing this morning, and I hope that all of us will be reminded that whether we're a hand or whether we're a foot, whether we're an eye, whether we're an ear, or in the first century, someone in the assembly may have said, whether or not we're an apostle, whether or not we can provide this gift or that gift, understand that everybody is important because we're all parts of the body. And I think that ought to play a significant role in how we view our thanksgiving and the heart that we have to help with what God has blessed us with. We are. I'm going to mention a couple other things, but we are, it seems to me, a very fortunate group for multiple reasons. And I'm thankful to be a part of this group. Let me mention the younger folks. I don't know that it's any harder to be a Christian now than it was when I was a younger folk, or when some of you older than me were younger folk. I think we would all have different ideas about that. My guess is that some people would say, yeah, it's harder. And I'm not sure I wouldn't agree with that. But if you're a college-age student this morning here, or a high school student, or a middle school student, or even in elementary school, if you're here this morning and you're in elementary school and you're hearing what I'm saying to you, I want you to know how important you are to the cause of Jesus. Because by your life, you're saying much about the respect and the honor and the encouragement that you draw from Him. So don't forget that. And I think we have a large group of younger people, and I'm very grateful for you. When I hear, I use this term accommodatively, but I use it positively. When I hear the noise, I love it. I love it. Speaks volumes, no pun intended, about who we are and about what the future can look like if we help these young people grow up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, which I believe we're doing. That's another thing I'm grateful for, these families that offer these spiritual blessings in their family. So thank you. I'm going to bring up the dreaded word again that's kind of been laying low, COVID. You know, back in 2020 when this virus or whatever it is hit, things changed for us like they did for most churches. And in retrospect, we may look back on that and we may say, well, you know, our elders handled that well, which I personally think they did. But I know that even among them, there was always concern about what we did moving forward, always, because that's who they are. That's the role and the responsibility that they have for each of us to help us move forward spiritually. So they were concerned about that. And as I told you then, and I'll tell you again, that one of the great advantages of this church is that because of the respect that you have for them, you acknowledge the fact that that's a difficult call. But yet, to my knowledge, every person who's a part of our group accepted what they decided, as we should, in my judgment. And we moved forward, knowing that we would move back to some level of normalcy at some time, which we're at. And I don't know what the future holds in reference to those kinds of things, but I know that their attitude is always, we're going to do our very best. We're going to do what is best for this group. But to some degree, we worked our way out of that, as most churches have, and we're back into some level of a routine. And I think it's good. Now I'm just talking to you about how I feel. I think it's good. Are there things that we can do to improve? Sure. And they're always considering those kinds of things to help us. But I'm going to tell you one of the ways that I think, one of the things that has happened over the past year or two especially, is that we have gained some families, we have gained some members, and we have regained some momentum that we had as COVID hit. And I think we've regained some of that momentum, and we have seen that there have been families who have, after their consideration, have said, we'd like to be a part of this group. And that speaks volumes, first, I think, to them, because they want to be a part of a church that is welcoming, and they want to be part of a church that is striving to serve God, and I think we're doing that. And I think they see that. They're like me. There are things that they probably see that aren't everything they want, but there's things that I see that aren't everything I want. Things that you see that aren't everything I want. But generally speaking, I think what we're about, what we're trying to accomplish, is really good. And we've added some wonderful people over the past year or two who can help us as we move forward. And I'm grateful for that. I'm thankful for that. And I have offered thanksgiving to God on behalf of those folks, especially over the past several months and years as they have joined us. So thank you for being here and being part of our group. So that's a plus as well. And then we have, let me just go back and just say, and these are three that you would think I would identify. We have great teachers here, people that are willing to sacrifice their time and their energy to make it a point to teach. And that's important. It's critical. I've heard people say, and I think it's valuable, that teaching is so central to who we are, central to every church. And I think that's been raised even now to a whole nother level. And I'm grateful for those who are willing to teach on every level because of how important that is. And then we've added deacons over the past several months. And now we have 18 men who have chosen at our request to serve us in special ways. And I personally have seen great evidence of what that's done for us. And I think you have too. Not only have we chosen those men, but we have other men who are capable of doing things to help and who in the future will be helping in several ways. And I really, really do appreciate it. All those things go together to help us not only be thankful for that, but to help us know a little bit more about where we need to move, how we need to move forward. And then I would say that we have 4 men who lead us. They serve as shepherds. I'd say it's a hard job. It doesn't come without its joys. But thinking about every single one of us spiritually and what's best for us, that's got to be a hard job. That's got to be some level of stress in their lives. But all 4 of them have continued to accept that role and continue to do that. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate other men who in the future will be willing to accept that role to help this church moving forward. That's not an exhaustive list. I understand that. I wasn't intending to try to make sure I hit everybody. But I just want you to be thankful. And for me to be thankful of all those kinds of things this morning. I'm going to go back, before we sing the invitation song, I want to go back to the passage, one of the passages that I began with in Psalm 100. And as I read this, the words are going to be underlined, but I want you to think of the third person personal pronouns that are mentioned in Psalm 100. So that none of us think more of ourselves than we ought. Here is the issue in Psalm 100. Make a joyful shout to the Lord, all you lands. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before His presence with singing. Know that the Lord, He is God. It is He who has made us and not we ourselves. We are His people and the sheep of His pasture. Enter to His gates with thanksgiving and to His courts with praise. Be thankful to Him and bless His name, for the Lord is good. His mercy is everlasting and His truth endures to all generations. There's no way to read that and not see that. This is not about us. This is about Him. And so I would leave you with that this morning. It's going to go back. It goes back to Him. But all of the blessings that we have among ourselves, among each other, go back to what He's done for us. And all those blessings are a result of, as we've talked about this morning, of Jesus dying on the cross, being raised to reign in heaven, to rule over the government of which we are a part, citizens of a spiritual kingdom looking forward to a spiritual reward ultimately that's in heaven. And so this morning what I would say and what the Lord offers is your opportunity to be a part of that. If the best you can do in your life is to be a part of some earthly kingdom, I'm sorry for you. If that's the best you want, then so be it. I'll share this with you. I saw it a couple of days ago on a bumper sticker in the window of a car. This is sad to me. I'm going to share it with you, though. The bumper sticker said, "I know I'm going to hell." but I'm going to enjoy it to the very best of my ability while I'm here. What do you say to that? My guess is that's someone whose mind is terribly skewed. Terribly skewed. Especially when it doesn't have to be that way. That person can live his or her best life now by being a child of God, and certainly can lead his or her best life in the future by being a part of God's eternal kingdom. Isn't it sad that there are people in the world who feel that way? But isn't it great that it doesn't have to be that way? That's not me. That's not you. We're thankful for what He has done for us, and may we always live for Him. If you're in this audience this morning and you have a spiritual need that we can help you with, come as we stand and as we